Are we back? Are we back now? Is this just fantasy? Got in a landslide, no escape from reality. You guys just doing a little concert for yourselves in my chat. I apologize. My rude Wi-Fi decided to die. Maybe I should just leave you guys entertain yourselves. You seem more. You seem you're more capable of entertaining yourselves than I am right now. It's not going well for me, I have to say. I can't be loud. I can't be loud though. I'm just a poor boy from a poor family. He's just a poor boy from a poor family. Spare him his life from this monstrosity. Easy come, easy go. Will you let him go? Wish me luck. No, we will not let him go. Okay. I was intending to fucking start reading like half an hour ago, but a lot of stuff has happened. So I'm just gonna start reading. You guys can just keep singing away. Toetti and Dee doing a duet. Uh, a diete. A di- Ignore me. I'm dumb. Okay. Hopefully this time my phone decides not to just stop giving me a hotspot. Anyway, we're going to be reading about Medieval Ireland by Claire Downham. Specifically, we're going to be looking at this section anyway, on craft and industry. So, finally, I hope you can all sit back and enjoy and relax. And either have me on as background music, or maybe learn something new, or background noise, I should say. The resources of the Irish landscape gave rise to many crafts and industries. The most important was food processing, for it allowed food to be stored and accumulated for trade, tribute, or as a safeguard against famine. The dampness of the Irish climate meant that grain often had to be dried before it could be stored, and drying also speeded up the milling process. Small amounts of grain could be dried in a domestic setting, over a fire or on heated stones. From the late Iron Age, drying kilns were used in Ireland for large quantities of corn. These varied in shape and size, but basically consisted of a furnace and a flue that led to a drying chamber. Several hundreds of these have been identified from the early Middle Ages, mostly in the grain-growing regions of Ireland. From the 5th century to the 8th century, kilns were more abundant, which complements the pollen evidence in indicating increases in grain cultivation. From the 8th century, fewer kilns were used, but they were larger and more sophisticated. This hints that grain processing became more centralized in the 8th century, and landlords may have exerted more pressure on their tenants to transport corn to their kilns. As milling technology and climatic conditions improved during the 10th and 11th centuries, kilns may also have become less useful. Wait, am I not back? I thought I was back. I thought you guys could hear me. Oh, maybe you guys... Hang on, wait. Maybe you have to... Might have to refresh. Can you see me? Oh my god, why is... Okay, that's better. Oh, this has been a disaster of a stream. Like, it was just blank for a while. Maybe doing that with the scene. I don't know. Okay, well that's good. I apologize. Things were... I hope my phone doesn't just decide to not do a hotspot again. That was really annoying. And if not, then this has just not gone well. Okay, let me get back into reading. Getting thrown, I will say, getting kind of thrown as a streamer can really put you off. Before the 6th century, the only technology available in Ireland to turn grain into meal or flour was grinding by hand using quern stones. The most efficient method was using a rotary quern that all comprised two small millstones with a handle and a central hole for pouring in corn. This was time-consuming labor that was often allocated to female slaves. The lowly connotations of the work are reflected in medieval Irish satire, comparing a person to a worn-out lower quernstone. Hand milling continued through the Middle Ages, but from the late 6th or early 7th century, water mills were introduced to Ireland. The church may have been an agent of change, as the old Irish word for mill, millin, comes from the Latin molina. The island church of Nendrum in Strangford Lough, County Down, boasts the earliest known watermill in Europe, which dates from 619 AD. More than 100 watermills have been identified from early medieval Ireland. There was a boom in their construction in the late 8th and early 9th century. This scale of investment may reflect a shortage of labour for hand milling and increasing demands for both bulk food production. Relatively few querns have been recovered from coastal towns in Ireland, which suggests that grain was often processed into meal or flour before being sold in the ports. Grain, meal, and flour were processed into a variety of foods. Brewing and baking were jobs associated with women in a domestic setting. In wealthier church settings, a professional male baker may have been employed. Bread baked on a griddle was an important feature of the monastic diet. The old Irish rule of Elba specifies that a monk's daily ration included a loaf of 30 ounces. Bread made of wheat was clearly associated with high status. Made with wheat was clearly associated with high status. Barley or oats were more common ingredients. Drinks were also brewed from partially fermented husks from barley or oats. Grains were also malted for beer, and beer was consumed by all ranks of society. It may have been a particularly important food source during the winter. Large churches and royal households employed professional brewers to ensure that the quality and quantity met their requirements. Milk could be used to make a wide variety of foods. Rennet was added to milk, to coagulated milk and cheese from cows and goats and sheep. Salting, drying, and pressing helped make foods that could be kept for longer. Preserved rounds of cheese must have been a familiar sight, for in the early medieval saga, the destruction of the Dergas, how hostile. The buttocks of a hideous giant were memorably described as the size of cheeses. Milk was also churned to make butter that could be stored in cold, damp souterrains or bogs. Meat was preserved either in cuts or combined with other ingredients in sausage or puddings. Bacon was the most cured meat and a common component of food rents. The 12th century vision of Mac imagines a world made of wonderful foods. Its glories include a bacon house with 40 ribs, wattled in tripe, and fortress protected by stakes of old bacon topped with fried lard. Other animal components of this visionary world are meat puddings and sausages, lard, tallow, and beef fat. The essential work of processing food for immediate consumption and storage clearly pleased the imagination as well as the stomach. Tallow, skins, and bones were also extracted from carcasses to support crafts such as candle making and leather making and comb making. Professional craft workers produced and repaired goods on a full-time basis. Their trades tended to be hereditary, with sons being apprenticed to learn the skills of the father. Occasionally, a woman might inherit the status of a professional craft maker if her father had no male heirs. The 8th century law tract, Uricht Beck, lists the main groups of professional craft workers in early medieval Ireland, and assigns them varying levels of status. Craftspeople of all ranks tended to cluster around elite settlements, where a regular stream of customers for their goods might pass by. This clustering also allowed secular or ecclesiastical lords to benefit from or regulate their production. The lowly ranks of craft people worked on the raw materials yielded by animal carcasses. Leather workers were involved in the messy business of scraping, soaking, and tanning animal skins using tree bark or tormental. Tormental was a plant used to give a red hue to leather, traces of which were discovered at the raised ring fort of Deer Park Farms in County Antrim, where shoes were made and repaired. The activities of a leather worker were also well attested in different phases at Ballinderry Cranogue. For those of you who don't know Cranogue, this is kind of a broad overview looking at Ireland in the 500 to 1100 AD, but I think right now it's mainly talking about the kind of 6 to 800 AD, which is still a very broad period. So this book even states in its introduction that it's very much a. I do apologize for not reading the introduction, the first 30 or so pages, because I read it myself earlier, and I was like, oh, I may as well read this if I'm going to be reading it anyway. But yeah, kind of about 600 to 800 AD, I think anyway. But Claire Downham, the author, acknowledges that she's taking a very broad overview. Where was I? Yes, here. The activities of a leather worker are also well attested in different phases at Ballinderry Cranogue. That's what I wanted to say. A Cranogue was a type of settlement that became very popular around the 7th to 8th century, I believe, and later on too, which is basically a sometimes man-made, sometimes not, settlement that's built on an island in the middle of a lake. Usually would house probably important foods, or it could be a royal center, like a royal settlement, or it could be maybe a kind of a last stand area. Oftentimes from monasteries, that's what the function would have been. If they were retreating back, they would retreat back to Cranogue, and some of them would have the paths to them laid under the water, so it would be quite difficult to know how to get to it if you didn't live there regularly. Oftentimes, though, they were just settlements. 250 fragments of leatherwork, along with leatherworking tools, have been found. In addition to shoes, leatherworkers made a wide variety of everyday objects, including scabbards, bags, straps, and belts. A set of specialist skills were required to produce vellum for manuscripts. This work must have been undertaken in larger church settlements. As vellum was usually made from the skins of young or foetal calves, the raw materials could be expensive, and care had to be taken to scrape pumice and stretch the skins without damaging them. The Book of Kells used the skins of approximately 185 calves, which entailed a great cost even before the folios were inscribed with coloured ink and beautiful artwork. Other animal products used in crafts were bones, antlers, and horns. A quarter of excavated early medieval sites have yielded evidence for the production of bone and antler artifacts. The most commonly produced items were combs, pins, and gaming pieces. The raw materials were easy to obtain, and an early legal text, Breha Nemed Toshuk, mocks the comb maker who frequents dunghills or competes with dogs for his materials. Imagine by the law tracks, like the actual legal law of like your country, making fun of you for your profession. Antlers from red deer could be gathered in winter and early spring. Despite the contempt to compete with dogs. Well, yeah, he had to go get bones, so I imagine they had to kind of be quick on their feet to gather up what bones were left. I wonder was the idea that these comb makers would sometimes be waiting outside the butchers or the leather makers or like, the scraps to be tossed away, and then they'd have to kind of shoo away the dogs to get theirs if they didn't have a good relationship with the leather maker themselves. Or maybe not enough money to buy the bones. I'm a say so streamer. I won't read out that comment. But that is I guess that's probably a good pickup line for like if you go to a furry convention and you see a dog. let me state, a person in a dog suit, not a real dog. We're not like Vosh over here. We don't uh, allow that type of stuff. Excuse me. Antler from red deer could be gathered in winter and early spring. Despite the contempt shown for comb makers in literature, their work did require skill. Early combs were of two types, either a single piece of antler with teeth on one side or a composite object with a tooth plate with riveted side plates. Within coastal towns, a fashion for longer and thinner combs developed, and these were imported to inland sites. Thus, Scandinavian-style combs have been found at Lagore and North, County Meath. The mass production of antler combs in Dublin and Waterford is attested through large deposits of antler waste. Bone objects that were made in Dublin include needles, spools, strap ends, handles, ice skates, and gaming pieces. Ice skates? I guess so, yeah. I guess if you're coming down from Scandinavia and you're used to they're living in the ice, they probably would have developed something that would allow them to move. I'd love to see how that would have worked though. I think they've gotten it so. I wonder how they would compare to normal skates. Obviously nowhere near as effective, but all my homies hate Bosch, so real. Woodworking ranked among one of the most prestigious crafts in early Irish law texts. Bridge builders, church builders, shipwrights, millwrights, and masters in yew carving could obtain a status equivalent to a physician or judge. Lower grade carpenters included chariot wrights, house builders, relief carvers, shield makers, and turners. Not much early medieval woodwork has survived except in waterlogged environments. At the large riverside church complex at Clonmacnoise, County Offaly, the work of a master craftsman was revealed with the discovery of parts of a bridge that could be dated from the tree rings in the wood to the early 9th century. A good body of data has survived in the construction of medieval watermills from rivers in Ireland, while Crannog sites have yielded evidence of domestic vessels. At Monet Loch, County Meath, stave planks and lathe turned waste suggest that bowls and buckets were being manufactured on site. Discarded items from Cranog's include barrels, tubs, platters, and baskets, which give a rich insight into the medieval home. Woodworking was also well represented in the archaeological finds from Dublin, which include houses, furniture, pathways, drains, fences, ship repairs, waterfronts, revetments, and a plethora of household objects. Wood was commonly used for food vessels, and there is limited evidence for pottery production in Ireland. In the northwest of Ireland, coarse pottery was produced between the 8th and 12th century, similar to contemporary Hebridean types. Hebridean is the islands, on the coast of Scotland, on the west coast of Scotland. These coil-built vessels, called souterrain ware, lacked specialist skill and were probably homemade. In early medieval Ireland, the church seemed to have been encouraged. Seems to have. Is that an incorrect sentence? In early medieval Ireland, the church seems to have been encouraged the development. I'm guessing what they mean. Seem to have encouraged, not being encouraged. Ruadh broke right there. Yeah, I think the sentence here is incorrect. In early medieval Ireland, the church seems to have encouraged the development of skills of masons in building churches and erecting carved monuments. While the majority of early churches were built of wood, some, particularly in the west of Ireland, were masonry built from the 7th century. Large ecclesiastical settlements were the biggest patrons of stonemasons, which is well evidenced at Clonmacnoise. A range of stone churches are visible at the site dating from the 9th to the 12th century. The cathedral was originally built in the early 10th century. In addition to these buildings, more than 700 early medieval carved slabs and 6 high crosses have been identified at the site. The carvings attest to a workshop of skilled masons, whose memorials could be commissioned by wealthy patrons, who must have been a significant source of income to the church. More mundane stone objects were also produced at Clonmacnoise, including querns, whetstones, bowls, nets, weights, and spindle whorls. Some secular sites also specialised in the production of stone objects. For example, whetstones were manufactured at the Ring Fort at Caer County Clare. The simplest stone objects, such as net weights, were probably fashioned by non-specialists in a domestic setting. Let me have a quick sip of my tea. I'm kind of disappointed. The milk we had it was technically in date, but it was kind of starting to go. It was like one day before it would go off, so decided not to go with that. But we only had almond milk, and I'm gonna be honest. My tea tasting almondy is not something I'm a fan of. You gotta go to sleep early morning for you. No worries, Laughslot. Thank you for showing up. I'm probably gonna be reading for a little while more, but I hope you have a fun day. Yeah, you have to go travel and go into whatever. But have a good time, Laughslot. Thank you for coming. One of the most common crafts in early medieval Ireland was smithing. Nearly two-thirds of excavated early medieval sites have yielded evidence of ironworking. A medieval farm could not operate without iron tools. These were produced by blacksmiths, but law tracks imply that farmers also acquired basic skills to repair them. The work of processing or smelting iron tended to take place close to woodlands for fuel and water for cooling metal and reducing fire risks. Mass production of iron from ore is witnessed at such sites, including Jonestown, County Meath, where 2 tons of iron slag was recovered, along with evidence of bowl furnaces. At Bofin-on-Cronog, County Mayo, large-scale smithing and smelting coexisted. Vikings may have introduced new metalworking techniques to Ireland for weaponry, but evidence from Dublin suggests that native ironworking practices also continued with some concession to imported styles. Copper, alloy, lead, tin, silver, and gold were also used to produce luxury items by craftsmen of the highest ranks. Non-ferrous metalsmiths tended to practice their art more exclusively on high-status settlements. Copper alloy was widely used for cast ornaments including ringed pins, penannular brooches, and horse harness mounds. Sheet bronze was used for decorative bowls and bucket plates. One of the most famous objects to be cast in silver was the Tara brooch. This small but magnificent peninsular brooch that was made around 700 AD showcases the finest skills that metalworkers attained in medieval Ireland. From the 9th century, the type of metalwork in Ireland became plainer, and the volume of precious metals circulating in Ireland increased. Ring pins, penannular brooches, and kite-shaped brooches were made in Dublin, which were traded widely and imitated outside Ireland. Imported glass was recycled into studs, beads, and amulets. On a number of early medieval excavated sites, it appears that glass and enamel workers plied their craft along fine metal smiths. Textile production can also be ranked among the most important crafts and industries in medieval Ireland. Archaeological work for this is limited as cloth rarely survives, and wooden looms leave little trace. Spindle whorls are nevertheless a common find in early medieval sites. Spinning and weaving tended to be regarded as female activities. Specialized cloth production took place at some high-status sites. Large numbers of spindle whorls have been recovered from the cashels at Caercamon, County Clare, and Carrigaila, County Limerick. Clothing was also important in medieval displays of status. Laws even governed the colours of clothing that different ranks were permitted to wear. Purple and blue for royalty, red, grey, and brown for nobility, and yellow, black, white, or dun for commoners. Medieval Irish sagas describe royal characters wearing cloaks and tunics covered or bordered with embroidery. The otherworldly woman in the medieval Irish tale The Wooing of Beckfola wore a tunic covered in red and gold embroidery and a purple cloak. The political and social significance of wearing ornamented cloths endowed them with significant economic value. One early text compares the profit of embroidery to the wealth of queens. Humbler textile skills were needed in coastal communities for making and repairing fishing nets and sails. This may have become a minor industry in urban ports during the 10th and 11th centuries. Later on, the outfit or the thing that I'm wearing, the lena, a particular color would become very popular. And that's the color of saffron, which is a quite a strong yellow color. Uh, some people say that it's not that there's this image of kind of medieval Ireland as a very backwards place, and it fits England to be kind of pushing such an idea, but that ignores the Isle of Saints and Scholars as it would become known and was very well known as even during those time periods. I think the showing that the Lena was actually often did use saffron, which is a very expensive dye, shows the level of interconnectedness that Ireland had with the broader European region, as well as further trade. Commerce and communication. People travelled for many different reasons, and there were a variety of roads and paths that traversed the Irish landscape. A law tract of circa 700 AD identifies five types of roads, from highways wide enough for two chariots to pass, to cow tracks that were wide enough for two cows and their offspring. Narrower paths comparable to modern footpaths and are also mentioned in medieval writing. The metrical metrical Denshincus. The metrical Denshincus claims there were five ancient roads in Ireland that reached Tara. This brings to mind the fiction of four royal roads in England. The heavy labour involved in road building is recognised in the saga. The wooing of Aten. One of the miraculous feats performed by fairy folk overnight included the building of a trackway over a bog. This myth may have been used to explain the origins of the Iron Age trackway at Corlea, County Longford, parts of which have been preserved. Where mythological creatures were not available, the construction of maintenance of roads was a public duty. They were important for diplomacy and war, contact between churches and trade. Building roads, serious business. One of the big reasons the Romans did so well was because, all roads lead to Rome, because they built all the roads. Or at least a lot of them. One important route dictated by physical geography was the Sly Moor, or Great Way, which used a series of eschers crossing the midland bogs of Ireland to link Dublin and Galway. Saints' lives and sagas provide incidental information about routeways, which describe the itineraries of their characters. The existence of local roads is witnessed in distribution of finds, including millstones from the Wicklow Mountains across Leinster. I will say, by the way, if you're ever going to visit Ireland, I would always recommend renting a car and getting out of Dublin, going and visiting small towns and villages, and places that just aren't Dublin. But if you do go into the countryside, I will have to warn you, the roads there are quite narrow. Quite narrow. Sometimes country roads, which have, cars going both ways, are really only wide enough for probably a car and a half. So you will be expected to pull over, or sometimes it's not uncommon for you to have to reverse back, or for the other person to have to reverse back, whichever is ideally quicker. Sometimes the person is just very, very stubborn. To reverse back and pull in to the nearest area that you can. I'm sure that's common in other areas, but I feel like anytime I speak to an American and they've driven around the place, they're always like, "Oh my God, your roads, man, they're so narrow, they're so thin. It's scary driving on those things, man." I don't know what accent that was, but it was some kind of American, I think. They fat shame people. They fat shame cars. You couldn't be bringing in a a massive truck into Ireland, it would just not do well. Then again, there's also like, you might get stuck behind a tractor for like 40 minutes, which is one of the most annoying things. But sometimes it's like even more annoying because like they're just trotting along, they're bouncing up and down in their seat, and they won't even like slow down or pull in for you. Let me very quickly just plug in my laptop. There we go. Let's get back to it. The existence of local roads is witnessed in distribution of finds including millstones from the Wicklow Mountains across Leinster. The growth of towns encouraged the development of routeways that transport goods to and from surrounding settlements. For example, the archaeological data from Dublin suggests that cattle, timber, milled flowers, and fluids and fruits were among the many items brought to the town from market, while manufactured goods and imports were traded back. The technology for haulage was limited. Many items were simply carried on foot. A legal commentary implies that slaves were used for this purpose. Livestock could be herded to market, and pack saddles were used on horses and oxen. Four-wheeled carts were also used, drawn by oxen or horses. Royalty and leading churchmen tended to travel in style, so they rode on two-wheeled vehicles pulled by a pair of horses and operated by a professional charioteer. A chariot of this type is depicted on the 9th century Cross of the Scriptures at Clonmacnoise, County Offaly. This Cross of the Scriptures at Clonmacnoise. There are many references to boats in early medieval Irish literature, and it wouldn't really be until obviously they had boats, but the Vikings arriving in around the 800s, I think it's late 700s into 800s, definitely bring along some new developments. Hang on, what's going on? No, Lenovo, I don't want you to just shut down my laptop. Thank you. There are many references to boats in early Irish literature, which shows that the natural routes of rivers and coasts were well used. 11 dugouts were found submerged near the bridge at Clonmacnoise. These were simply fashioned from hollow tree trunks. Other boats that are well known from early literature are coracles, and currachs that were made by stretching hides over a wooden or wicker frame. Despite their apparent fragility, these crafts are very buoyant and are suitable for rivers and seas. The Voyage of St. Brendan describes a vessel with a ribbed wooden frame covered with tanned hides and smeared with butter, and possessing a central mast and sails. Other ships were built with planks. The technology of these improved during the 10th and 11th century through Viking influence. A number of nautical terms were borrowed into Irish from Old Norse. Timbers and nails have been recovered from Dublin, which witnessed the construction and repair of ships taking place on site. The most stunning discovery was the remains of a warship recovered from Roskilde Ford in Denmark that had been made and repaired with Irish oak during the 11th century. This vessel, Skuldelev II, was more than 29 meters long and was equipped for 60 oarsmen. Many transported goods were perishable, but the journey of some items along Ireland's rivers and coasts can be traced in the archaeological record. The sandstone that was used to make carved slabs at Clonmacnoise was presumably taken by river on a journey of 5 miles or more, while finished products appear at the other sites in the Shannon Basin. At the ecclesiastical complex at Nendrum, County Down, millstones were brought in from the Bloody Bridge Valley in the mountains of Mourne, which required a sea voyage of some 50 miles. Internal trade is also reflected in the finds of souterrain ware from northeastern Ireland and Dublin, while coins, jewellery and other items manufactured in Dublin have been discovered throughout Ireland. Throughout the early Middle Ages, royal dwellings and churches were local centres for the collections of tributes. Goods were often manufactured on those sites. The production and distribution of prestige items may have been carefully guarded by the elite in an economic system that involved social bonds of reciprocity and clientship. The exchange of goods through political rather than economic ties is represented in the Book of Rights, which was probably compiled around 1100 AD. According to this text, foreign imports, agricultural goods, and manufactured items were exchanged between local dynasties, provincial kings, and the most powerful king in Ireland. Hello, Halconis. Welcome in, welcome in. I heard that the Vikings and Irish had a rich history of cultural exchange. Not super sure of that though. The raising is so comfy. Well, thank you so much, Halconis. That is very true. To give a brief synopsis, effectively, the Vikings, especially as they were beginning to raid into England as well, although the Vikings never established as permanent a basis as they did in England. I don't know, was it just the case that they just were never able to get a foothold here or something, or maybe it wasn't their full intention. But you had Northumbria in England, you had in the entire kingdom of England being taken over by the Vikings at some point, or rather by like Denmark and stuff. I think it was, but many of the main cities in Ireland there's some say that they were completely built by the Vikings. There is some evidence that there were settlements there in the first place, but they definitely made them important centers of trade because they were constantly trading and they had massive trade networks across the North Sea, the Irish Sea, and into around France and stuff. But places like Dublin, Cork, Limerick, and there were many other small little kind of ports that they set up too, all around the coast of Ireland. Eventually, some of them started to become lords within the region, kind of their own kind of self-styled kings, and they would, particularly in Dublin, I can't remember exactly the names, but in the south, particularly, kind of in the middle of Ireland and the south of Ireland, was where the Vikings kind of found major footholds. It was actually in the north where the Irish resistance was the stiffest, particularly among the Unail clans and the Ulaid, that the Vikings just couldn't make headway for whatever reason. But what ends up being very interesting is these Viking towns become very, very important later on with the rise of Brian Boru. Brian Boru becoming the first non-Unail. Unail is a particular dynasty that ruled and had the high kingship for a very, very long time, for hundreds of years. But Brian Boru was the first kind of high king of Ireland that wasn't of the Unail, who rose to power. And there's a very interesting book about Brian Boru that I would love to read on stream someday, that details that it's likely that a significant aspect that allowed him to come to power was his conquering and kind of subjugation of those Viking towns, which were very wealthy, able to pull in a lot of mercenaries and very good, capable units. Particularly the wealth aspect, that allowed the inability to push them out from that area actually later allowed the primary kings of Munster, the Brian Boru family, who were, I believe, part of the Dalgaish. I think they were the Dalgaish dynasty, to leverage that economic power to take away the high kingship from the Northern Unail, or at least from the Unail in general, and cement their power. But absolutely, the Vikings did have a significant influence. This book is kind of touching on bits and pieces as it goes, particularly but of course they would. If they take over a region, they're going to bring in their knowledge, their systems, their culture, their history. But many of them also married with, took up customs of Ireland. The same very similar thing happened with the Normans as well. Many Normans, there's a phrase that they became more Irish than the Irish themselves, in the sense that they very much forsook their. Wait, was it Normans? Am I thinking of? Very much forsook their prior their prior, what would you call it, culture for the Irish culture. They became very much embedded in Ireland, Irish culture, and then of course later on the invasion of England and all that with Strongbow. But it's almost unfortunate how Vikings are remembered solely for their military achievements, considering how advanced their trading and legislative systems were. I don't know much about their legislative systems. That's something I just don't know about. Although this book is regularly mentioning Irish law tracts, and the Irish law tracts, which are basically Brehon law, were laws, entire tracts about various social positions. There's even an entire one on beekeeping. So they give a deep insight into kind of the things that were, how the society was structured and what type of things were very important um, within Ireland. Later on, this was kind of subverted by later English law, beekeeping. Yeah, an entire law tract on beekeeping. I think it's called oh god, what's it called? I can't remember. You must kiss them goodnight. That would be that. There's a lot of bees in a single hive. That would be a lot of kissing. That would be a lot of just like, okay, bee soldier number one, good night. Okay, queen, good night. Okay, worker 246. It would it would take a long time. Trades were surprisingly regulated around the Middle Ages. So yeah, yeah, I think many people have this perspective of the Middle Ages as being this like absolutely lawless period. It wasn't. They were just like us, and they had often very strict uh, hierarchies and systems in place that worked for them, of course. Where were we? Oh, here we are. Seasonal fairs and markets were an important feature of the Irish trading economy that predated the advent of towns and continued into the present day. Clusters of archaeological finds at seaside locations may witness the existence of beach markets. Pre-Viking examples include Bettystown, County Meath, where the magnificent Tara brooch was discovered, Dunnynail Island at Strangford Lough, County Down, and Dewey, County Donegal. Other sites, such as Lambay, County Dublin, Dalkay, County Dublin, and Cork Harbour, retained their significance for trading into the Viking Ages. Islands or headlands may have been particularly valued as early trading centres, not merely because of their accessibility, but because they represented safe places that traders could defend or withdraw from. This element of security or trust was essential for commerce to flourish. Before capitalism, mercantilism was the norm after all. That was kind of the with the trade guilds and such. But I don't know if that would have been. I don't think that would have been around the 500s to 1100s AD in Ireland. You could have had maybe in the later High Middle Ages period, but I'm not so sure of. I don't know what you would call this economic system. I'd have to look into what they would call it, because it could be that, like, I don't even know if feudalism is the correct term. They might have a specific term for it in like Irish history studies. Commerce was a natural adjunct to any large gathering of people. In early medieval Ireland, one of the most important types of assembly was called an onach. These meetings were called by kings and normally a provincial king or a king of Tara. The king of Tara, the person who held the seat of Tara, pretty much, was often considered the high king. It was sort of a, they didn't always abide there, but it was kind of seen as like, if you held a Tara, that was a pretty good significant example that you were considered a high king. It's a lot to do with mythology and history, and I guess just tradition as well. Although many Tuatha may have originally held their own. Tuatha is a kingdom, basically. A small kingdom. You would have had Tuatha, and then there would have been the provincial king, kind of the overry, and then the Ardry, which was the High King of Ireland. Some people try and argue that the High King was not an actual thing, and they're probably right that it wasn't a kingship as such, where it was like absolutely set in stone. There was often fighting, and often they would take a little bit of subjugation, but it was still a recognized title, to my knowledge. Large ecclesiastical settlements whose status might rival that of a small petty kingdom also came to hold their own oneg by the 10th century. The onach had a legal and or judicial role, but plenty of other activities went on as well. The best recorded conventions were those held at Telltown, County Meath, which were associated with the kingship of Tara. A number of oneg are mentioned here from the 6th to the 12th century. The 11th century place name lore of Carman, perhaps Carnal Way, County Kildare, gives the fullest description of what an onach might entail. According to this story, the event at Carman took place the first week of August, corresponding to the ancient festival of Lunasa. It was used to promulgate laws and judgments, and to discuss dues and tributes. Alongside these events were 7 days of horse racing, music, storytelling, and 3 busy markets, one for food, one for livestock, and one of foreign Greek traders. I wonder, does that mean specifically like there just happened to be a market of Greeks, or some traders from Greece, and they were just like, you guys can have a little market. These lively events must have encouraged not only merrymaking, but also the formation of social bonds and commercial deals, including future orders of goods and organization of payments. Records of oneg describe from the decrease from the 10th century, although their assemblies did not cease. Their economic role may have been usurped by permanent settlements, and it may have been noted that by the 11th century the term onach became interchangeable with market, a word that was borrowed from Old Norse. The arrival of Vikings on the Irish coasts in the 1790s, in the 790s, not 1790s. Those would be some very old Vikings. The 790s was clearly damaging to the economic fortunes of many churches. Some of the first references to Vikings in Ireland is attacks on monasteries on islands dotted around Ireland. Coastal churches were their first targets: Iona in Scotland, Inishmurray, County Sligo, Inishbofin, County Galway, and Recru, either Lambay, County Dublin, or Rathlin, County Antrim, bore the brunt of the attacks in 795. The amount of plunder that was carried back to Scandinavia from early raids is witnessed in the metalwork recovered from Viking graves in western Norway in the 9th century. 790, the 790s is what I was trying to say. 795, I think, that's around the time the first kind of mentions of them in the various annals that we have available to us. Apart from theft, the earliest economic activity of the Vikings in Ireland was the gathering of tribute, perhaps as protection money. By the 840s, Vikings were gathering ransoms for captives and establishing a series of camps along coasts and riverbanks. The inability of different Viking groups to conquer large swaths of land meant that their settlements stayed near the coast. The Vikings' control of the seaways, advanced shipping technology, and networks overseas enabled them to excel as middlemen in Irish foreign trade. While Vikings continued to plunder churches after the 9th century, the raids became increasingly tactical. A militarized economic policy developed that involved Viking groups striking at political enemies and economic centres that were outside of their immediate trading network. The economic hinterland of Dublin is revealed in a range of silver hoards of the 9th and 10th centuries that cluster in the Irish Midlands and North Leinster. Several hoards also mark an economic hinterland around Limerick and Waterford. The hoards may not only reflect increased wealth being generated in Ireland during the Viking Age, but also a growing gap between the rich and poor. An increasing amount of raw materials produced by those of lower social echelons were exported, rather than being redistributed in Ireland, in exchange for foreign luxuries and silver that were hoarded by the elite. Larger ecclesiastical centres, including Armagh Armagh and Clonmacnoise appear to have developed an urban economy by the 11th century. At Clonmacnoise, paved streets and regular plot divisions had been noted along with small-scale industrial activity. Two single coin field finds in a hoard of late 11th century, which included 30 coins minted in Dublin, a bronze ingot and fragment of a gold ornament, have been recovered from Clonmacnoise. At Armagh, a sizable settlement is attested in 1090, when 100 houses were destroyed by fire. 6 single finds of coins in 2 hoards ranging in date from the late 8th to the early 11th century have also been recovered from the settlement. There's evidence of industrial activity on the site. The written and archaeological evidence highlights the role of churches, kings, and seasonal markets in the early medieval economy. From the 8th to the 11th centuries, communication improved, permanent markets were established, and overseas trade increased. While Vikings loomed large in the picture, it can be argued that some of the economic trends were in place before their arrival. Ireland was not isolated in the early Middle Ages, and recent research has highlighted the long distances that people sometimes travelled. Minerals preserved in the tooth enamel of skeletons indicate the geological origins of the drinking water consumed in childhood. That is insane. What? They can tell where you grew up by minerals in your teeth? Where the data from tooth enamel does not match the geology where the skeleton is found, is an indicator of mobility. The method is not perfect in identifying regions of origin, as results may be confused if a child was highly mobile in his or her early years, and the same set of mineral traits can be linked to a range of different locations. Okay. So it's not as perfect as that, as it makes it sound. A male skeleton, excavated at Bettystown, County Meath, yielded a proposed origin in North Africa or southern Portugal. This individual arrived in Ireland at some point between the 4th and 7th century. Other skeletons from the 5th, 6th, and 7th centuries in Ireland cast light on immigration from Britain and Central Europe. The travel of Irish monks abroad during the early medieval ages are widely known, but traders were also involved in networks between churches. The 7th century life of Saint Philibert of Noirmoutier refers to the arrival of an Irish ship loaded with cargo at the island monastery off the northwestern coast of France. When the controversial Irish monk Saint Columbanus was expelled from Gaul, he went to board a ship at Nantes, where Irish goods were conveyed. The role of kings in negotiating overseas trade is hinted at in the pre-Viking Age wisdom tract, the Testament of Moran. It describes the benefits that a truthful king could bring his people, including access to a merchant ship laden with valuables. From the 9th century, Ireland's major ports on the islands was drawn into Viking maritime networks that spread northwest across the Atlantic and southeast to the Caspian Sea. Dublin's fame as an international marketplace is represented in 2 Arabic accounts. The first, penned in Sicily around 1154 AD, drew from earlier reports and identified. Oh. Am I dead? Am I dead again? Oh, no, hang on. Am I... Oh yeah, I'm apparently dropping so many frames. Oh wait, no, wait. Are we back? Are we back? I think we are back. I think we're very much back. Let me just try to hide that player. Refresh. I apologize to everyone. My internet is not as good as it usually is. This is a rare enough stream from where I am, so Hopefully, we won't have these problems going forward. Hmm. Okay. I'm going to assume, because it shows on my end that everything is fine, that I'm good to continue. So, because I think things are okay. Let me just double check real quick. Yeah, my stream preview is working at least, so I'm gonna keep going. Hopefully, I'm being recorded. I'm not recorded, and I'm streaming. I'd be very concerned if I was being recorded. Oh no, it's dropping again. What is going? Okay, no, it's back up to 100%. I don't know. I'll just keep going. I'll just keep going. Dublin's fame as an international marketplace is represented in two Arabic accounts. The first, penned in Sicily around 1154 AD, drew from earlier reports and identified Ireland as a place where ambered and coloured stones could be purchased. The other, based on the work of Al-Udri, a Spanish Muslim geographer in the 11th century, identifies Ireland as a Viking land where the nobles wear expensive hooded mantles adorned with pearls. That's just Dublin, you silly Billy. The main categories of imports to early medieval Ireland were slaves and horses, foodstuffs, pottery and other vessels, textiles, and raw materials for jewellery and accessories. The buoyancy of the slave trade on both sides of the Irish Sea in the 5th century is attested in the writings of St. Patrick. Not only was he brought to Ireland with many others, but years later, when he was a missionary, a British warlord, possibly based in Strathclyde, stole some of his recent converts. So so that it's evidence of both Irish slavery in the English Isle and or and then the reverse as well. Not all slaves who dwelt in Ireland during the Middle Ages were from abroad. Prisoners of war, criminals, debtors, and the impoverished could be enslaved. During the Viking Age, Dublin became a renowned slave market, both for importing and exporting people. In 871, the Viking king Ivar. Is that a? You could literally buy yourself a GF. Yeah, it probably cost a pretty penny. Or Toette, you could go win yourself a GF. You could go just raid some people and steal one, which I think is probably the more based thing to do. War won brides. I believe this reference to Ivar might be Ivar Stiggerson. Ivar 871. That's Ivar Stiggerson is just a name that's popping into my head right now. I could be completely wrong. The Viking king Ivar returned in triumph from Britain with 200 ships of slaves of Angles, Britons, and Picts. Jesus, he was travelling all over. This was presumably booty accumulated from campaigns in Northumbria, Strathclyde, and Pickland. Dubliners continued to acquire human booty from abroad until the 12th century. This was illustrated in 1098, when the Dublin fleet was tempted away from an allegiance with the people of Anglesey by the English with the promise of Welsh captives. Stealing GF derogatory. Stealing GF threat. Horses were another import. Foreign steeds were especially valued. They are listed as suitable compensation for injury in the law text Brethe den Cecht. Den Cecht is I'm almost certain, is one of the old Irish, Tuatha Dé gods. Pretty sure that's the one of, actually yeah, it's compensation for injury, which happens to be, he was the goddess of medicine. It's interesting. In 1029, the ransom that was paid by the Dubliners to secure the release of the king's son from the men of Brega included 60 Welsh horses, 1,200 cows, 60 ounces of gold, and a ceremonial sword. The term Galliot, Galliot, a derivative of Gaul, foreign. Also, it's probably like Gaelic, a derivative of Gaul, foreign, referred to good quality mares. Newly imported horses are among the entitlements of kings of Cuile Falmain and Vertulach, claimed from the king of Tara as their stipend in the Book of Rights. Well-bred horses were therefore a luxury import that might have been used for racing, riding, or pulling the chariots of kings in early medieval Ireland. Fragments of pottery are durable in archaeological contexts and provide a wealth of information on early medieval imports. In the last quarter of the 5th century and the first quarter of the 6th century, pottery was imported to Ireland from the East Mediterranean. Items included amphorae, beadware from Greece, Carthage, and the North Mediterranean, which may have contained oil or wine, and red slipware bowls, aware, from Asia Minor and North Africa. As wine and oil were both important in Christian ceremonies, the Church may have been an agent in encouraging these imports. Secular rulers may also have wanted exotic foodstuffs in order to offer lavish hospitality. In the later 6th and early 7th centuries, the focus of pottery imports shifted to Gaul. The most popular goods from this later period were wheel-made jars, bowls, and cooking pots, eware, which have been recovered from the 25 sites in Ireland, including humbler ring forts and high-status sites. They have a broad pattern of distribution in the southwest, Midlands, and northeast of Ireland. Pottery imports declined in the 8th century, but it re-emerged with the growth of coastal towns. Cooking pots and wheel-made bowls were imported from Chester, Stamford, Bristol, and Crowland in England during the 10th and 11th centuries. After the Norman conquest of England, more pottery was imported from northern France, including greyware, red-painted wares, and glazed Adens ware. Soapstone and schist vessels were also imported through trade links with the Viking world. A schist bowl, I don't know what that is, from Bengenish, County Kerry, probably came from Norway, while soapstone vessels found in Dublin may have come from the Shetland Islands. Pottery and other vessels may have accompanied other goods into Ireland. Wine was a prominent import to Ireland throughout the Middle Ages, whether imported directly or indirectly. The Irish word fine was borrowed from the Latin vinum during the period of contact with the Roman Empire. The amphorae that came to Ireland in the 6th and 7th century may have contained wine or oil. As trade shifted from the Mediterranean to northwest Europe in the 7th and 8th centuries, wine may have come in barrels. The life of St. Ciaran of Clonmacnoise refers to merchants bringing wine along the river Shannon from Gaul. Vikings may have assumed control over much of the wine trade to Ireland from the 10th century. The Middle Irish word for a wine ship, fin carb, it's probably more fin carb, contains a second element, carb, borrowed from the Old Norse carfi. Walnuts and plums are among the foods imported to Dublin during the Viking Age, as witnessed by the contents of cesspits. Other goods imported for culinary purposes included salt from England, probably Cheshire. Wheat was also imported to Ireland in the early Middle Ages. Imported textiles were worn by people of high status in Irish society. Mention is made of a bishop who wore foreign vestments by Cogitus in his 7th century Life of St. Bridget. A wealth of textile fragments have been recovered from Viking Age Dublin. These include high-quality worsted fabrics that may have come from England or farther afield, more than 130 fragments of silk from the Eastern Roman Empire and Islamic centres, along with silver and gold braids from continental and Islamic centres. Fragments of silk have also been found at Lagor Crannog. These fine cloths may have not come to Ireland directly from their producers, but may have been traded via other ports. The luxurious cloths traded by the Hiberno-Scandinavians were clearly objects of desire among neighbouring people. According to the 12th century saga, the War of the Gaels and Foreigners, the 12th century, the War of the Gaels and Foreigners, I'm pretty sure is the story of Brian Boru and the defeat of the Dublin Vikings, in which Brian Boru died, unfortunately. The story goes is that he was found praying in his tent. He was like 98 years of age or something, like very very old. You're impressed that good quality worsted fabric was made at the time? I'm not really much of a fabric person, so let me very quickly look up what that actually means. Oh, that's I see, I see. Ooh. Yeah, again, unfortunately, I'm not much knowledgeable in textile history, so I can't really comment much on it. But it seems to have been. According to the 12th century saga, The War of the Gaels and Foreigners, when Limerick and Dublin were plundered by the people of Munster in the late 10th century, many coloured cloths were among the objects they looted. Items of antler, bone, and ivory are another category of imports. The presence of roe deer antlers in Waterford shows that bulky items of relatively low value were economical to import from abroad. Walrus ivory was imported from the North Atlantic and may have accompanied furs that had been lost in the archaeological record. Walrus ivory pins, walrus ivory pins and gaming pieces have been found in Dublin. Other materials that came from abroad were glass, amber, and jet. In the early Middle Ages, glass was imported to Ireland from the continent, and fragments of vessels have been found in a few high-status secular and ecclesiastical sites, including Clogher, County Tyrone, Cathedral Hill, County Down, and Dublin. Imports of amber predate the Viking Age as shown by the Tara brooch. Other amber imports may have come from the Baltic via Britain. In the Viking Age, significant amounts were brought directly, as suggested by the large volume debris from amber working found at Fishamble, St. Street, Dublin. Fabric doesn't exactly survive time gracefully without intervention or specific conditions. Yeah, it tends to be that just deteriorates, but maybe maybe whatever the conditions were allowed it to be held. Could be that it was well kept, especially if it was considered quite valuable. Many metals were another import. How long is this little part about overseas trade? Okay, only another page in a bit. Metals were another import used for practical and ornamental purposes. Tin was needed for bronze, which was an important element in jewellery and ornamental metalwork. Tin was probably imported from Cornwall or Brittany. Only a small, regular supply was needed to keep Ireland's bronzesmiths employed. The rarity of gold before the Viking Age encouraged Irish metalsmiths to excel in the art of gilding and producing intricate items from gold wire and granules, which worked their limited supply of the precious metals to maximum effect. Mercury was used in gilding and may have come to Ireland from Italy or Spain. The discovery of a hoard of gold of 10 gold arm rings on Hare Island, County Westmeath, and 5 gold arm rings from Vesnoy, County Roscommon, suggests that Vikings imported gold as well as silver to Irish ports. To date, no more than 130 hoards of Viking Age date have been recovered from Ireland, as well as many single finds. While Ireland has its own sources of silver, the style of a number of objects in the hoard and limited metallurgical analysis suggest that much arrived in Ireland through Viking trading networks. Imported coin and silver objects were often chopped up and used as bullion, or melted down to make other items in Irish workshops. Manufactured metal items that were imported to Ireland include base metal jewellery and mounts, which were not all co-signed to the melting pot. Anglo-Saxon origins have been assigned to a gilt copper alloy mount from Noath. English and Pictish terms for brooches are found in the 8th century law text Brehe Nemet Tushk, which hints that brooches were acquired from across the sea. In the Viking Age, disc brooches were imported from England and Germany. Weapons were also imported. The first generation of Viking settlers in Ireland brought weapons with them, as witnessed by early furnished burials. Later imports include a late Saxon example found at Fishamble Street, Dublin, and 10th century blades from Loch Gur, County Limerick, and Ballinderry Cranogue, County Westmeath. The Ballinderry sword is particularly fine, with a silver mounted handle and a blade inlaid with the label Wilfbert. Birth. Okay, some weird, which was synonymous with high quality swordsmithing in the Rhineland. Ah, I see. Oh, wait a minute, hang on, is that Ulfbert? Is that what that's saying? With the label Ulfbert? I think that's what that is. It has a V rather than a U, but I guess maybe it's the same idea. The appetite of imported goods had to be fed through a balance in trade. Ireland's exports throughout the early Middle Ages included slaves, animal products, textiles, and metalwork. Ireland had already been mentioned as an importer of slaves, but they were also exported from the island. The life of Saint Germanus of Paris, written in the 6th century, refers to the sale of Gaelic slaves in Marseille, along with people of other nationalities. Slaves were raided and trafficked across boundaries. The foreignness of slaves may have added to their cachet as a luxury item, but their otherness also contributed to their vulnerability and may have made it easier for slave-owning societies to dehumanize them. Slave raiding activities by Vikings are documented in Irish chronicles, including the capture of 280 people from Kildare in 886 and 710 people from Armagh in 895. Individual tales of slavery show that individuals of relatively high status could end up being sold abroad. Saint Findan of Renau was a nobleman from Leinster who was captured by Vikings, but escaped and made his way to the continent, where he pursued an illustrious career in the church. In the early 11th century, it was claimed that an Irish poet called Mirut arrived in Normandy as a slave. Attitudes towards the slave trade changed in the 11th century, eventually leading to its banishment from Ireland in the late 12th century. The export of agricultural products and textiles from Ireland is hard to trace. These items do not survive well in the archaeological records. The historian is therefore silent on incidental references. According to a letter from the 640s, Irish butter was eaten by monks at the monastery of Bobbio, Italy, founded by Saint Columbanus. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. What was I? Oh, I feel like I have a sneeze coming on. Interesting that we were exporting butter long before like Dairygold and Kerrygold were out there. It is unlikely that this product was only sent to one location, so a wider foreign market may be assumed. Wheat was also exported from Ireland from the late Viking Age. Meat was a major component of the tribute demanded by Irish lords and kings, and some was probably sold abroad or exchanged for other goods. Furs, leather, or textiles were exported from Ireland. The aforementioned 7th century life of Saint Philibert of Normandier refers to Irish exports of shoes and clothes. Woolen cloaks were prominent in the tribute demanded by Irish kings, and the surpluses that were generated would have been well suited for export. The woodlands of Ireland were abounded with furry creatures. The export trade in marten skins is noted in the Domesday Book account of Chester. Ooh, thank you for the hydrate redeem and the stretch redeem. Let me stretch there. And I might have to go get a cup of tea in a moment or two, so that can be my hydrate. Ugh. No, don't drop my book, please. Stretch the neck, stretch the arms. And I just straighten out the legs a little bit. Wiggle the feet. That was a nice little stretch. And I will, yeah, I hear the the kettle going, so I should go up and get my tea in a few minutes. Metalwork is most easily traceable export from Ireland. The great skill of the early Irish metalworkers has already been touched on. I wanted to mention something there actually. Oh yes, the reference to the woolen cloaks is interesting because a particular style of cloak called the BRAT, became very popular in Ireland. This is basically the shaggy mantle cloak. It's the one where it's a lot of fur, a lot of fluff. Um, it just became a very popular, and it kind of became a sign of yeah, shaggy mantle is kind of the term that's actually used, which doesn't sound very royal or noble. Let me see if I can. But it's basically a big, heavy coat, and you could see why it would be useful. Ancient furry. No. Listen. I mean, if you're gonna call them ancient furries, you have to talk about like the Vikings and like some of the other Germanics that like would get dressed up as trees and other animals and like howl during their pagan rituals. Metal. Oh yeah, here. While the basic form of the penannular brooch was imported to Ireland from late Roman Britain, metalworkers soon adapted it to create something distinctively Gaelic. Some of these brooches were traded across the Irish Sea, and pre-Viking Age examples have been found at Loughndewi Castle on the Gower Peninsula, Lil's Awel, Den Bigshire, and High Down, Sussex. The first two, I'm pretty sure, were Welsh areas, going by how they looked, how they were spelled. Vikings lapped as wolves, so might as well be. It literally was. Hmm. I'm going to. My chat not be lame. I'm gonna deny that message. Be good, please. Ooh. Oh no, it wasn't you. It was something else. It was no need to say what it was. Yes, it was May Doom Guy. Welcome in, May Doom Guy. I would rather one not use random terms like that in my chat. Just kind of, I mean, if we're talking about it, that's fine. But just kind of throwing it out there, maybe not the best idea. But welcome in, mate. I hope you're. But you do that always. I think some people are okay with it. I think it depends on the streamer. That's your top one greeting. Is that well? I guess made Doom Guy. I could see why such a term could be something you'd be like, ah yes, this is what I want. But welcome in. I hope you're having a very nice weekend, end of your weekend. We're just doing a little bit of reading, so I hope you are able to relax and chill out and enjoy learning a little bit about medieval Ireland. 8th century mounds from shrines and caskets have also been found at a few sites from the western shores of Britain. Ornate hanging bowls that may have been produced in Ireland from the 8th century have been found in England and Scandinavia. The volume of exported metal objects appear to have increased significantly in the Viking Age. Bronze ringed pins and stick pins were mass-produced in Hiberno Scandinavian workshops and widely distributed around the North Atlantic. For you, the weekend is already over. Oh, that sucks. It's so lame. I know quite a few people who have to work on like Saturdays or Sundays. I don't know if it's the same for you or maybe you're just in a time zone where it's like It's already morning and it's Monday morning and you're getting up, which would suck. Um, but I hope maybe you're like, I guess it's technically over for me as well. It's now midnight, so technically the weekend is over. But for me, the weekend isn't over until I wake up Monday morning. Where were we? But I do hope you had a nice weekend. Silver circulated through the medium of purpose-made broad-band arm rings that were produced in Ireland around 850 to 950. These often exhibited lines of stamped decoration. Hiberno-Scandinavian arm rings followed trade routes and political links outside Ireland. More than 200 complete and incomplete examples have been found in Britain. These focus in northern England, 127 pieces recovered from the magnificent Corradale hoard in Lancashire, the northern coasts of Wales and the islands of western coasts of Scotland. Examples have also been found in Denmark and Norway. Technically, I didn't know you were subscribed to uh Haru to Ede. Did you get a gift sub, or are you like a big sub? Are you in a Woomfy now? I hope you're in a Woomfy. Haru's a pretty cool guy. Pretty cool heckhound. I felt betrayed recently, actually. Like literally about an hour and a half ago. I when I was getting all those errors with my well, all those issues with my stream, and I used his crying emote as a sticker. I always thought that he was like I always thought that was like a tiny little shibby crying version. And he had his like knees held up against his chest, kind of in like a sitting position. He's not. I realized in this thicker emote large version that that it's just like his shoulders that are showing. He's not actually like sitting down with his knees up to his chest. I was very saddened by that. Because that's always what it looked like to me when in the small version. People are down horrendous for him, by the way. I'm not surprised. He's a pretty fun person to listen to. And I mean like when you have I find that, when it comes to femboys, people who like them will congregate there, and they will be sometimes if you don't get a handle on it, yeah, that could turn bad. I think generally though Haru has a pretty good handle on that type of stuff. He knows what level he wants to allow and what not to. So I think it's a good thing. I think you're always going to get that kind of level of stuff where people are going to want it to try and turn those type of streams. You're a femboy and your attention has gone back to me. Well, I'm not one, I will say. My friend Haru Mizuki is one, so perhaps you might like his channel. But I think it's a very tough balancing act to do, because if you give an inch, they'll take a mile, and your stream can very quickly become just all about that. Like sometimes I've clicked onto ASMR streams where they obviously had that type of model, and it's literally just them talking about being a fanboy or like Thigh Thursday or whatever. And it's very like I just want to listen to someone talk and like chill out. Especially if it's like ASMR type stuff. I really don't need to be hearing about something sexual every like 5 minutes. I just kind of like why I like Haru. He's just it's like a broken record when that happens. Yeah, exactly, Toetta, exactly. It's the same stuff over and over and over again. It's like someone in chat makes some kind of comment. The streamer makes a comment that only if you take it in the that only if you have like a destroyed mind, that you immediately, everyone in chat just goes ayo and like, oh ha ha ha. But then like the thing is that it's every like 5 minutes. It's the most annoying thing. And okay, I will say that can be enjoyable from time to time. especially when it kind of spirals out of control. That can be funny. But oftentimes it just feels like it's like you just want to keep that joke going. It takes over a stream. So I don't besmirch anyone who does go down that route. It's a very successful approach, but I can just find that it can get too much. Which again is why I like Haru. Haru is very measured with his stuff. I never really see that. He just plays his games, and he's very fun to listen to. He's very cheerful and pretty high energy, way more energy than me. Good lord, I swear he downs like 5 energy drinks before stream. Okay, Crespian. I'm actually gonna be honest. I injured myself in the gym last Friday. So I'm not feeling up to doing push-ups. I probably should have disabled those. Next time I stream, or when I feel confident in doing things, something like push-ups, I will do them for free for you, Crespian. You will get, and I will double it. I will double it. I mentioned it at the very beginning of stream, but there was all those like technical issues that I was having, so it may not have come across for people. But you have that banked, and we will say that it is worth 30 push-ups rather than the regular like 15 to 20 I do on one redeem. So it's going to be worth double, and you can just like call me out on it anytime. Ideally not at the same time as someone else redeems the push-ups. That would suck. So you basically have an IOU from me for push-ups. Where were we? Oh yes. How many pages are left in this chapter? Okay, we're actually almost done. We have like 5 pages left. I think that would be a good time to leave it off. Commentaries on Irish law refer to imported and exported goods that could have been washed up on shore after a shipwreck, including hides, iron, salt, foreign nuts, horns, wine, and honey. This reveals the precarious but lucrative nature of early medieval trade. The legal list is restricted to items that could be salvaged and represented the tip of the iceberg of the range of goods that were imported and exported throughout the Irish coast. I'm going to have a quick sip of my tea. Still not a fan of that almond milk. I'm gonna have to get a new thing of normal milk soon. It's too almondy. Funnily enough. The prime. I'm sorry. I'm just imagining someone ordering some kind of food like like an almond dessert or something, and then sending it back because it's too almondy. It's too nutty. The primary means of exchanging goods in early medieval Ireland was through barter. Units of wealth were used to estimate value as a yardstick for such transactions. Ironically, given his former condition, St. Patrick valued the amount of wealth he had given away in Ireland to aid his mission as equivalent to 15 slaves. In Irish law tracts of the 7th and 8th century, female slaves were commonly mentioned as a unit of wealth, and so were dairy cows, with 3 dairy cows being cited as equivalent to 1 female slave in glosses. Smaller units of assessment were sheep, fleeces, and sacks of grain. Well, Toete, there's your price for your purchasable GF. 3 cows, 3 dairy cows. And for those of you who don't know, in Ireland, medieval Ireland, cattle were basically a massive measure of wealth. I know it mentions it here, but like your status was often determined by how many cattle you owned. Like if you owned huge herds, you were basically a king. You were at that level. You could own none and be a freeman. Big woman worth more. tall that is? I imagine so. I imagine that like if you want a big, tall, strong woman to breed you warrior sons and daughters, uh, that's probably going to cost you at least like 6 cows. You might be able to haggle them down for like 5. That's so expensive though. Well, I mean, that's just how it goes. That must have been, that's so weird to think about. Imagine you're writing about this stuff and you're writing away and you're like, oh, this like this investments, exactly. It's a long-term investment. Um but like you're writing about like the volume and the prices of all these items that you receive and you're like, oh, this was two female slaves and 2 cows worth. And you're like, oh, by the way, a female slave is worth at least 3 cows, around 3 cows. Like, it's weird. It's weird. But I guess like it's just like that's just. Did they think? Did any of like the people that would? They probably just were like, yeah, that's just how it is. Obviously, I imagine that the churches and the saints probably had a certain opinion on it, but I imagine just the people who were just constantly dealing in this stuff were just incredibly numb to it. It's weird to think of wedding. It is weird to think of cows as currency. But I suppose when you remember of how much meat you have in a cow, you can create dairy products. Like it's a pretty expensive object back then. Still is the norm in some places. Yeah, in some places, barter essentially is still very much a thing. The economies of gift, barter, sale, and bullion overlapped in early medieval Ireland. St. Patrick states that he rejected gifts of jewellery pre-offered by women. While these were intended as gifts or votive offerings, it suggests that jewellery was a portable form of personal wealth that men and women were free to dispose of. Law tracts refer to seath, a treasure or jewel, as a standard unit of value in the 7th century and 8th century. Reference is also made to silver bullion, the loan of the word for an ounce, unge, and a scruple, or a 24th of an ounce, from Latin, suggests that the principle of a bullion economy may have been adopted from the Roman Empire. Glosses of an early Irish law indicates that one dairy cow was equated with an ounce of silver. Damn, how do you fit all those cows in your wallet? You're gonna have to get a bigger wallet, and that's where our sponsor, Wheelbarrow Wallet, comes in today. It's just a wheelbarrow, but we put some leather on it on the outside. We have those springs that you click the button and all your cards come up. We have that, but with a cow. You click a button and the cow gets like spring launched into the fence, into the pen. That'd probably be a good weapon. Just launch cows at people. There's a reason why cow rustlers were so hated. Law tracts established fixed prices for compensation and payments for marriage, fosterage and clientship, and some services. One could question whether this attempt at price fixing represented the actions of the elite who had or wanted control over economic policy, or whether it was a social regulation intended to prevent extortion by the wealthiest in society. It can be questioned whether the laws provided a record of well-established mores, or a conservative act at a time of flux, or did they embrace and firm up a set of changes that had recently occurred. Earlier generations of scholars have often assumed that these laws had a timeless character. However, the evidence of social changes and the growing power of the Church in the 7th and 8th century may hint that they were written down in response to changing times. From the 9th century, growth in overseas trade led to the hoarding of wealth. More than 100 silver hoards found in Ireland are dated to the 9th and 10th centuries. They contain status objects and currencies in the form of ornaments, currency racks, or currency rings, hack silver, ingots, and coins. 26 of these hoards are comprised only of complete ornaments, and so may reflect gift or tribute payments rather than commerce. The most common component of Irish hoards is chopped up items, whether ornaments, currency rings, ingots, or coins, which is suggestive of economy exchange as bullion. Ingots and currency rings were produced within Ireland, mainly within a time frame of 850 to 950 AD. The weight of Hiberno-Scandinavian arm rings tends to fall in the range of 24 to 26 grams, a range that is linked to the Scandinavian ore. In the 10th and 11th century, weights used in Dublin tended to be slightly heavier, around 26.5 grams, perhaps reflecting the influence of the Anglo-Saxon system of weights. These changes may reflect shifting patterns of trade away from Scandinavia and towards England. Before the Viking Age, coin finds are rare in Ireland. Frankish coins have been found at Maryborough, County Laois, and Trim, County Meath. Individual coins of Offa of Mercia, 780 to 96 AD, have been found in 6 locations. Small numbers of Arabic coins come to Ireland indirectly through Viking hands, but circulate in their original form because of the high quality silver they represented. Their exotic inscriptions were in effect badges of quality. Kufik dirhams have been found at 17 sites in Ireland. Early Viking coinages minted in East Anglia and New York in the late 9th century also found their way to Ireland, but the bulk of imported coins were 10th century Anglo-Saxon issues. The mints represented in these coins included Chester, London, York, Lincoln, Derby, Norwich, Oxford, Barnstable, and Exeter. Under the influence of trade contacts with England and farther east, Irish traders engaged in a hybrid economy, incorporating coin into their systems of exchange. This flexibility was an advantage given the wide range of trading partners within Ireland, or with Ireland. An influx of coin to Ireland in the 980s may have encouraged the foundation of a mint in the 990s. In Dublin, by King Citric Silkenbeard. He must have used some lovely fancy beard oil and like beard shampoo to be called Silkenbeard. These coins were based on those minted by King Ethelred. I always struggle with these names. By King Ethelred the Second of England, an Anglo-Saxon. Dies were used for some of the coins that may have been acquired through raids or diplomacy. It could be argued that the establishment of a mint was a political as much as an economic act. It confirmed a good degree of control over exchange to King Sictric and his successors, and it allowed them to be tax moneyers working in a town, or to tax moneyers working in a town. The success of the early Dublin coinage is shown by its wide distribution. Dublin coins have been found in Iceland, Faroe Islands, Norway, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Russia, North Germany, Frisia, and Rome. After 1035, the utility of the Dublin coins decreased. Their quality declined and the circulation became more localized. Nevertheless, the mint in Dublin continued to operate into the 12th century. Tax, tribute, and renders. As mentioned earlier, a freeman in early medieval Ireland society was bound to their lords on receipt of a fief, often comprising cattle, for which they had to provide an annual food rent, hospitality, and manual labour. These payments were in proportion to the size of the original fief and depending whether or not the client was free to terminate his contract at will. If a client evaded his obligations, his lord could requisition goods by force. The compilation Mwynigwyd Sencusa for Nalban, a 10th century text that includes 8th and 9th century materials, relates the military obligations of communities of British Dalriata to provide 2 7-bench ships from every 20 households, or a variable number of fighting men. From the 9th century, kings levied extractions from their people with less reference to individual ties of dependence. The poem on the Onach of Carman indicates that royal assemblies served as venues where tribute was negotiated between a king and his people. As the role of the Onig appears to decline, a more uniformed system of land-based assessment emerged. The Tricta Ket seat, the, tri- hmm, the Trica seat, which contained a notional figure of 30 bailí, anglicized as townlands. It witnessed as a territorial unit of taxation a military levy in the 11th century. I'm just going to sit up a little bit. Excuse me. You guys are probably hearing all this movement. There we go. Where are we? All of Ireland had been divided into 185 Triaca seat by the early 12th century. Law tracts identify 3 layers of kingship in Ireland. Ari Tuatha, king of a people, was a petty kingdom, the smallest unit of royalty. He might be ruled over by a king of several kings. A Rúri, which actually, eventually, Rúri is a name in Ireland. So, quite an interesting name. I like it as a name. Rúri. It's spelled a little bit differently, though, to what's here. Rúri, who was in turn overseen by a Rí Cosed, a provincial king. The nature of the relationship between kings could be couched in terms of free and base, mirroring the relationship of clients to lords. In genealogical terms, free population groups, or Tuatha, claimed kinship with the people of their overking. Their subjection was seen to be a more honourable and voluntary than a base client people. Ed Tuatha, who obliged to pay food renders and a share of judicial fines to their overking. From the 9th century, the power of provincial kings over petty kings increased. They secured the obedience of underkings not only by taking hostages, but by giving gifts. By the 11th century, provincial kings were leading more ambitious military expeditions, which placed a greater fiscal burden on their underkings. As a sweetener to this arrangement, overkings granted stipends, turastal, to subject peoples. According to the Book of Rights, the stipends included prestige items and luxuries. In return, underkings gave agreed amounts of tribute, military support, manpower, and hospitality to overkings. The demands of a new overking over his people may be illustrated in the chronicle accounts of the subjection of the town of Dublin to Mael Shocknail, overking of the southern Unail, in AD 989. On that occasion, he was said to levy a tax of 1 ounce of gold for every garth, or tenement, in Dublin, which was to be collected annually at Christmas time. Oh, Christmas time. They spelt that really weird. They didn't have a space between Christmas and time, so I thought it was like, is this a place? Is this like a place in Ireland that I do not recognize? But no, it's meant to be Christmas time. 9 years previously, Mael Shocknail had freed the southern Unail from the claims of tribute by the people of Dublin. Subsequent raids. I think it's just a textual error. So like I saw, it was Christmas time, but it was all one word. So I was like, Christ Mass time. What? That took a second for my brain to work. Subsequent raids made by Mael Shocknail on Dublin may be interpreted as punishment for non-payment of their dues. Mael Shocknail also levied extraordinary taxes on Meath in 986 and 1007, which were paid to win the support of the powerful ecclesiastical communities of Armagh and Clonmacnoise. It appears that by the late 10th century, provincial overkings were able to levy direct taxes over a wide area, and a land-based system of taxation was developed to facilitate this. The relationship of the church to its people, like that of a lord to his people, was conceived as a legal contract. Services of baptism, communions, requiems, and masses were given in return for dues, which maintained the clergy and the temporalities of the church. In the period of conversion, dues may have been conceived of as a series of individual payments or gifts, but as the powers of the church increased, regular payments of tithes were established in return for religious services. Initially, it was the tenants of church lands and those who willingly entered the clientship of the church, whose payments and labours were the backbone of the ecclesiastical economy. Beyond this group, pastoral provision and payments to churches were initially less generalised. In the Rule of Patrick, composed around 800 AD, the laity were entitled to receive the religious services of an ordained cleric in return for tithes, debt duties, labour services, and bequests. As the church became more powerful in Irish society from the 8th century, lords were encouraged to pledge payments for their people to the church. Over time, ecclesiastical taxes became more of a matter of compulsion than choice. Urban centres were a rich source of revenue for both kings and church. Their growth in the 10th century may have spurned innovations in taxation. A poem in the Book of Umain lists the dues of craftsmen and traders in Dublin to their king. They include a horn of mead for every vat, a comb for every comb-maker, a sandal from every shoemaker, a vessel from every glorious silversmith, a scruple from every moneyer. Ignore that. I will. A sandal from every shoemaker. What happens if there is a odd number of shoemakers? And you end up with like one sandal that isn't a pair. That's a bad poem. Irish traders who came to the port had to pay dues in malt, sea meat, salt meat, firewoods and candles, while foreign traders paid a cowl for every merchant's ship and tolls. The same poem lists a tax paid by the people of Dublin to Armagh. This may contextualize a composition to the years AD 1106 to 1129, when Kellogg, Archbishop of Armagh, sought to bring Dublin under his jurisdiction. This tax was presumably in return for clerical provision and consisted of an ounce of gold and an ounce for each nose, thus a scruple of gold for each man. At face value, this does not make much sense, for each man has a nose, yet must pay a scruple rather than an ounce. The inconsistency may be explained by other references to a nose tax in Irish and Scandinavian literature. Bishops in western Norway were paid an annual due of 9 grams of silver for each four-tide nose, 5.4 scruples of silver per person. In the 11th century, which compares well with the Irish account, the principle of a nose tax may have been introduced to the Irish Church through Scandinavian influence in the 11th century. In early medieval Ireland, there seems to have been considerable development of systems of tax, tribute, and renders over time. Conclusion. The perception of early medieval Ireland as a land of self-sufficient farming communities has been subject to significant criticism in recent years. Clearly, there were economic surpluses and specialization from the 5th century that encouraged long-distance trading networks. From the 10th century, some coastal ports grew in size and influence through contact with Viking trading networks. The development of a handful of towns of coastal sites and major church sites stimulated the growth of a more market-orientated economy. Irish rulers were keen to reap the profits of economic expansion. While economic relations between rulers and subjects were initially defined by agreements between individuals, they became increasingly generalized and regularized by the 11th century. This allowed power to become centralized in the hands of provincial overkings and the greater churches, but it also generated increased competition over resources, and the 10th and 11th centuries may have paved the way for growing inequalities of wealth in Irish society. And the next chapter, chapter 3, is Society AD 500 to 1100, which I might read another time, because it's getting kind of late and I need to be up early. So thank you all for joining me for this stream. I might see if there's anyone we can raid into who is also doing ASMR. Is anyone doing ASMR that doesn't have like 800 viewers, please? it all just seems to be kind of all just seems to be some lewd ASMR. Wait, hang on. We might have one here. Well, thank you for the history reading. I hope you guys enjoyed. I know it was a little bit scuffed at the very beginning. Hmm. Okay, there doesn't seem to be anyone online at the moment. Similar or smaller size. Let's see. Oh, nope, that didn't work. It's all just ear licking, and I don't think, or like GFE ASMR. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it here. So, thank you all. Oh, hi, Foxy. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just ending stream right now. I just finished a chapter of the book we were reading. Oh, I sometimes pop into your ASMR streams and I kind of lurk and I go to sleep. Um, it's such I hate when that happens to me as well. I join a stream and it's like bye guys, and then they do a raid or something, or the stream ends. But I hope you're having a nice time. And thank you guys for showing up. Okay, sorry about that. If you do want to meet someone, I can show you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. If you have someone, give me. Me saying hi and you saying bye is my Rua experience. No, Dino. It's hard, especially when I need to go, to sleep. Dr. Dorian Crane. Ooh, that is a nice name. Dr. Dorian Crane. Like that. Let me see if they show up on my thing. Dr. Dorian Crane. Oh, I like that name. Dr. Dorian. That just has a nice sound to it. Oh my god. Oh, that's an unreal model. Oh, what's he? Is he doing? He's doing reading. A bedtime ghost story. Oh my, a very good ASMR friend of yours who does reading. No, but then they're gonna find an ASMR reader who's better than me, and all my friends are gonna leave me. And I'm gonna have like, no, I'm gonna be left alone. But that is an unreal model. He's a witch doctor. Not a wait, is that the right term? Am I thinking no, not a witch doctor, a plague doctor, a plague doctor. I love plague doctor looks. They're so cool. So we're gonna send you guys over to this guy, Dr. Dorian Crane. Uh, do give him some love. But thank you all for joining me. It's always a pleasure. I hope to be able to read a little bit more soon, or maybe do a proper ASMR stream. I know I just haven't done them a lot in recent times. It's been I guess I've just been playing a lot of Baldur's Gate, to be honest. But I will try and get back into them a little bit more. They're kind of difficult to do because usually I have people around and there's talking. But I will send you guys over to them. He's the sweetest. I hope so. Grab Mila Margaret and Slongafoil, and I will see you guys next time.